set.
That almost sounded like the gavel.
There's the gavel. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for April 27th, 2015. Phyllis, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mayor Olson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Deborah Williams?
Yes.
Trustee Joe Cervelli?
Here.
Rita Gozell?
Here.
Vivian DeGore?
I'm here.
Chris Hansen?
Here.
Sandy Pennington?
Here.
Town Manager Nick Landry?
Here.
Attorney Kenny Carberry?
Here.
And Clerk Wolford?
Okay, thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Have a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Trustee Gregora, second by Mayor Pro Tem Williams. All those in favor? Approval of the agenda?
I was going to pull something out of the consent agenda. I forgot.
You're late.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll see.
You're late now.
Doesn't matter, I guess.
We'll slow down.
Slow down a minute.
Okay.
I'm saying no till I can ask about the consent agenda, okay?
Okay.
I'm asking about the item about the extension of the agreement. Can we pull that, or can we ask a question about it? Well, we should pull it.
7, which one is that?
I don't have it open.
If we want to discuss it, we should pull it.
7E.
Okay, pull it. So that-
Okay, pull 7E.
7E, thank you.
Yeah. 7E. Okay. Any other changes? Okay. We have a motion to approve the agenda with pulling 7E. Motion by Trustee Gregora, second by Mayor Pro Tem Williams. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next, reports, questions, and issues. Who'd like to start?
I'll start since I promised to be really short.
Okay. Trustee Sorrell.
I attended last Thursday night along with the mayor, the Historical Commission Education event put on by the Historical Commission, and the president of or the chairman of the commission, Larry Dorsey, made a great presentation on the history of railroads in Boulder County, and it was full room. I was quite surprised, really, and very enjoyable. Second thing I would like to, as a comment, since this doesn't count as attempting to discuss something on the consent agenda, because the post-act notes are in the consent agenda, and that's going to, but in their notes, there was a mention of a Louisville Trail proposal, and I don't know what that is, and I was wondering what the Louisville Trail proposal is that was mentioned in there in the post-act notes, or maybe it was OSAC notes.
No, it was
No.
PROSAC. I have the
There's
same question.
There's another mention in there, too, of some set of amenities that
Right.
wasn't delineated either, that I'd sort of like to have clarified.
But they're not attempting to change their notes, so I just
Okay.
have those questions that came up out of their notes.
Okay, maybe you could either give us an answer or get back to us on that?
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
give the board information as soon as I get it.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay. Trustee Dozell?
Yes, I attended the DRCOG board meeting on April 15th, and there was a presentation by the Piton Foundation, talked about subsidized housing in the Denver metro area. And in the whole region, the total percentage of affordable housing units was 4.8%, or 56,900 affordable housing units. Denver County had 9.3% with 26,942 units. Adams County was next in line with 5% affordable housing units with 8,274. And Boulder County came in third, which I was surprised about, given all the discussion about affordable housing, with 3.9% of the housing units within the county are considered affordable, subsidized or affordable housing, 5,093 units. And then we also had a presentation by the new CDOT Executive Director, Shaylin Bott. And what was interesting, he's only been here 2 months, he said that his vision and view is adding capacity to highways, transportation, without tolling doesn't make sense. So he's pretty much going down the path that this is new executive director CDOT, that anytime you add more capacity to our highways within Colorado, he's going to consider tolling as part of that, just like what we've done on 36. He mentioned that as an example. Then on April 18th, I attended the Arbor Day celebration. It was really a fun event, even though it was kind of wet and cold, but it was still fun. I planted my little blue spruce tree, and I hope he grows because I'm calling him Little Blue. April 21st, I attended the town board retreat that was held at the fire station over in El Dorado Canyon. It was really a good day of meetings. April 23rd, went to the Rocky Mountain City Summit along with the mayor. Downtown Denver Partnership put it on. What was interesting about that is that there was a lot of discussion about mobility within the town, and that streets should be considered our living rooms. So I thought that was a really unique concept, that they said, think of your streets, because your streets usually make up 80% of all your space within the town. And so of your open space, the other, besides parks and stuff, your streets make up 80% of the open space within the town. And think of your streets as your living room, meaning use them to every advantage, not just for driving on, but for holding events and for using them as a way to display art and a lot of other things. So that was a very great concept. And that your city should be walkable. And in order to make it walkable, you have 4 things that have to happen. You have to have a reason to walk, to someplace to go to within that town. It has to be safe, comfortable, and interesting. And then they also talked about that as we add more capacity to more lanes to our streets, to our town streets, that it doesn't really reduce congestion. What happens is you get more capacity, in congestion, increase in traffic. And so most of the towns now, cities throughout the world, are going from having, like if you have 5 lanes, they're going to drop that down to 3 lanes, 2 for traffic, 1 for turning, and then a bike lane and parallel parking on both sides. So it's very interesting. I have all the data and stuff that was presented by these groups. But I thought it was, and then 10 foot wide is the maximum width of car lanes anymore, because again, they say the more you expand, of course, everything expands into the available space. So they say control it by keeping it narrower, and then have bike lanes protected by parallel parking, and sidewalks, 8-foot sidewalks protected by parallel parking, and have fewer lanes of traffic. So it was a very interesting day. I thought it was well worth the time, and a lot of people from around the country and the world that talked about what they were doing. And the 25 to 35-year-olds is what everybody wants to have move into your town. And they say the only reason they're moving into a town is because it's the right place to live, not necessarily the place that they will work. So I think that was an important thing. And then the last thing is that I went to the mayor and manager's State of Superior on Friday, April 24th, and that was a great presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Hanson?
Not much to report. I attended a ProStack meeting. The primary discussion was about the parcel, the El Dorado Park parcel that we're going to be discussing tonight, so we'll elaborate on that a little bit more later. And then attended the town board retreat, where there's some good discussion about what we're going to do moving forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Williams.
Yes, I attended a number of meetings, the town board retreat at the Rocky Mountain Fire, April 21st, which is a really great meeting, and just wanted to comment that these retreats are better than they've ever been in the past, and I really appreciate staff and all of my colleagues for making those retreats very, very beneficial for our visions. Then I also, every year, the Louisville Library does a staff appreciation lunch, and we all just bring potluck and whatever, for appreciating the Louisville Library staff, and that was great. It was really nice. I've done that, I don't know how many years, I guess 4 or 5 years now. And then I attended the Arbor Day. That was April 18th, last Saturday. It was very, very rainy, but I did think that the Youth Leadership Council did a very nice job with their little bird feeder, the peanut butter seed exercise they had for kids, so that was great. And I attended the State of Superior lunch. Thank you very much. You did a very nice job, Mayor. I have my First Fridays this Saturday at...
Your first Friday is...
I'm sorry, my First Fridays on Friday, excuse me. And my topic is going to be on the El Dorado K through 8 parcel, and hoping that people come to just discuss what you'd like to see on that property. I know we've had many discussions in the past, but that's the hot topic. So that will be Friday from 7:30 to 9:30 at the Starbucks this Friday. Let's see, and a couple things. The Morgul. There was a link that was sent out, and it didn't quite get you to the Morgul. It got you to another website that you kind of had to hunt and fish for what you were looking for. So if we can send that out again, or another one that has at least a little bit more info. I felt like I was digging a little bit for what we plan on doing for that. And then, let's see here. I think that's good. I had a couple other things, but I'll pass and move on.
Okay, Trustee Gregores?
So I attended the Arbor Day as well. I think this is my 8th year in a row, and I've kept count. The score is now 4-4. We've had 4 Arbor Days that were sunny and beautiful, blue skies, just gorgeous spring days, and we've had 4 years like this year, rain, cold, snow sometimes, but it was still good though, even though it was kind of wet. And I did appreciate the youth leadership, and also the art that we got to vote on, and I'm hoping that that's going to grow. We had some very talented kids that had some great art. I agree with you, Mayor Pro Tem. This was, I think, by far the best retreat that we've had on the board. A lot done, a lot of collaboration, very open, great discussions. I hope it continues that way forever. That's what retreats are supposed to be about. And then on Friday, last Friday, I went down to the state capitol and amongst several hundred people commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide. Governor Hickenlooper was there, gave a great talk, speech, and several other members of the community. But everybody that was here when we did our own proclamation was down there as well, and every single one came up to me and said, thank you so much, again, thanking the town, thank you, Mayor and trustees, for supporting that proclamation. I mean, every single person came up, so thank you for that.
I did the same retreat, the same State of Superior lunch, and agree with the kudos that's already been given on that. On Friday, while Deb is having her first Fridays, I want to remind people, Town Superior garage sale is Friday and Saturday, and be at my house because I'm having one. Several sort of questions I have here. I got some comment after the last meeting that we asked for public comment at the beginning of our discussion, the board's discussion of parcels 1 and 2, and that people who wanted to make comments after they heard our discussion felt precluded from doing that. So I want to hear from people after they hear from us. So I don't know how we do this. If we wait to the end, if we ask at the beginning so those people who want to make their comments at the beginning can leave, and if we clean up at the end and ask if there are any additional public comments, sounds reasonable to me.
No, I'm open to doing that. I have preferred to move public comment to more of the beginning because I'm sensitive to the people that might want to leave.
Right.
And not stick around for a long discussion, so
But if we do
it's a
some
balance.
cleanup.
Sure.
But is there anything, legally speaking, that they can't speak after we've spoken, open it up again to public comment, or?
Only if it's a public hearing in a quasi-judicial matter. at that point, then if you recall, you close the public hearing,
Right.
then you have deliberation, and at that point, no additional public
Right.
comment can be taken.
But
But in a typical, the concept plan or something else on the agenda, it's fine to do it that way.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, and I see we've got the Open Space Advisory Committee minutes. I was actually they're called meeting notes, I guess they mustn't have been voted on, but it's very useful to have these in a timely manner. So I'm pleased to see they're on our desk. They weren't in our packet, however. So just want to reinforce having those committee meetings, advisory committee meeting minutes turn over quickly, because they are relevant to discussions we have at the next meeting. And then about the more details needed in the committee minutes, in the ProStac committee minutes. The one is on number 3, the amenity prioritization. It said it stays the same, but it didn't say what it was. So, and then that Louisville Trail issue that we need more information on, I think that emanated from the OSAC joint dinner with Louisville's OSAC committee. Louisville put forth another trail link, and I think, Patrick, you can tell us what that is if that's allowed. If you want to know now, or we can get an email on it, I guess. But I think Patrick's aware of what that request is. So you guys make the choice whether or not you want to hear now or get an email on it.
I prefer to hear now.
I'd like to know when we know.
Okay?
That was my request.
He told me last meeting what it was, so I think he knows this meeting what it was. Okay?
Good evening, Patrick Hammer, town staff. The city of Louisville is interested in making a trail connection from the Davidson Mesa underpass, traveling west along Marshall Road towards their water treatment plant. So a trail on the north side of their water treatment plant that would then eventually connect down into Boulder County open space. It's all within Louisville property and Boulder County open space. But it was a topic that's been brought up since we also have a 5-year trails plan, and we also do trail recommendation and open space recommendations to the county. I think it was more of a, Louisville was letting us know it was a high priority for them and just wanted to let us know since it was on our side of the street and see what our advisory committees thought of that trail connection. And I can provide more information to the town manager with the connection.
Okay, thank you.
That's all for me.
Okay, I'll go through my announcements. Went to Arbor Day on the 18th, board retreat on the 21st, Rocky Mountain City Summit on the 23rd with Trustee Dozell. Also the Historical Commission's railroad presentation on that same evening, and the mayor-manager lunch on the 24th. And today I went to the state capitol for a press conference with Metro Mayor's Conference on Senate Bill 177, which is the condo construction defect litigation. It passed the Senate and was assigned to a House committee and probably has had action by now. I haven't got any news on what happened there, but that was probably something happened on it today, so we'll read about it in the paper tomorrow. And that's it for my announcements. Let's see, town manager.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Town attorney?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Town clerk?
Welcome back.
Yes. I'll quickly go through upcoming events, and then we'll go on to public comment. Reminder that Sunday, April 26th, is another fly fishing event in Purple Park.
In the rain?
No, it's going to be sunny. Garage sale, Sandy's house, May 1st and 2nd, and the rest of the community.
And we can continue our First Fridays on Saturday.
And can we bring our bulk items, Sandy, to your house for?
I get 50% commissions, all I ask.
Saturday, May 2nd, the Historical Museum's open at 10 a.m., followed by the Spring Historical Walk to the Industrial Mine Site. I did that a couple of years ago, and it's a great opportunity to learn about our history. If you haven't ever done that, I'd highly recommend that. And Morgul is coming up in May 15th, 16th, and 17th. And a reminder that our second meeting in May is going to be on Tuesday because Memorial Day is Monday the 25th. That's it for my announcements. Okay, next we'll move on to public comment. If you'd like to make public comment on consent or non-agenda items, you're welcome to to do that at this time, and just maybe wave your hand. I'll motion you forward, whoever would like to go first. If you'd limit your comments to 5 minutes, that'd be appreciated. And it's just a reminder to state your name and address when you come up. Okay, go ahead, sir.
My name is John Eckhart, and my address is 1996 Daly Lane. I was told if I had something to present that I should make 10 copies. I don't know where these go.
You can get to the town clerk there.
So I apologize if this is just the wrong place to bring this up. Actually, a first-time homeowner. We just moved in this year, well, last year, to the property on Daly Lane. Happy to buy a place, happy to be here. We did unfortunately find during the hailstorm water coming into our foundation through one of the walls, which I don't think at this point is a true foundation issue, but obviously we're concerned, kind of a heart-dropping little moment there. And so we've been doing everything we can on the property to manage the water, keep it away from the foundation. There were some negative grades and some, just pure roof draining issues. All of those have been identified and fixed at this point. And I've also had conversations with the engineering team, some of the members of the engineering team, Brian and Jim and Ed. I want to compliment Brian. He's been awesome. He came out 3 times to look at the street, because at this point the only area where we can see water on the property is stagnating in the curb on the street. And so this is also directly above another issue we found on the property, which is that the sewer line has a negative grade as well. So I've been working with those guys, or discussing with those guys, what exactly we should be doing out there, whether the water that's been sitting at surface level could have affected the sewer directly below, and whether or not, in the upcoming maintenance this summer, we should do a little better job, a more complete job with the gutter system in the cul-de-sac and make sure that the water is really getting down the hill. So they have a plan. They've had a plan since last year. None of it's changed. And I don't know that I necessarily think it, I think it should, but I'm not qualified to say that it should. And anyway, I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the board that that this is a real problem for me personally, and possibly for some of my neighbors. And I'd like it to be given some attention by the city management, I suppose. I'm also requesting that the engineering team so far has denied taking care of the cost of the sewer for reasons that I think are valid to them. But it seems obvious to me the water is really at fault. It's been there for years, possibly decades, and I do think that the lack of drainage has caused the problem. So that I've caught it early, I think, has reduced the expense. And obviously, so that's request 1. Request 2 is that we review that all the drainage is properly managed on the street so that we don't have even more expense at some later date. That's it. Happy to answer any questions that you have right now. Submit more information if it's warranted.
Okay. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. We'll certainly have staff do some further work on it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
Before my 5 minutes start, I would like to say thank you, because at the beginning of these meetings, we get to hear what all of you have been doing for the town, and it's a substantive effort on all of your parts. It takes time away from your families, it takes time away from your jobs, and I appreciate it, so thank you. Please start the watch. I talked to you today about...
Name and...
Oh, Teresa Clark, 765 East Wiggin Street, here in Superior. I talked to you today about 2 groups of funding identified in the Town Center Cost Sharing Agreement titled Exhibit B, Town Center Public Improvements Probable Cost Summary. The first group identified is on line 10. It identifies taxpayer funds for grading, landscaping, and irrigation of parks and open space. These funds are specifically identified for that use and should be used for just that: grading, landscaping, and irrigation of parks and open space. Any entity or organization wanting to build infrastructure on a landscaped park space, for example, a basketball court, a play structure, sports field, or band shell, should at a separate time submit that request to the town for effective public engagement. The submitter of the request for the infrastructure should also bear the cost of a direct mail to existing residents to ensure clear and timely communication to the town. The request for infrastructure is a business case, including reasons to substantiate it. For example, public enjoyment, projected increased tax revenue for SURA or the town. The request should also include projected purchase and maintenance cost, and who's going to pay for these costs. If the requested infrastructure involves a public improvement to be used for special events, then the extra cost to the town for those events should be included. For example, a band shell or sports field should include the town's cost to host the event. For example, additional law enforcement, cleanup, traffic management, porta potty rental, and presence of EMTs. So that's the discussion for the first set of funding identified on line 10 of the cost-sharing agreement. Use of those funds for grading, landscaping, and irrigation of parks and open space. Then handle the infrastructure for those spaces as a separate entity. So, if the development company or ProStack or OSAC or anyone, private citizen for that matter, feels that they want additional infrastructure on the park space, then we would have a defined and inclusive process for that. The second set of fundings, number one, number two, is in Exhibit B on line 15 of the cost-sharing agreement and is first discussed in Section 16 of the agreement, which states that there are $10 million to be used at SURA's sole option as directed by the town. And the language in the titled Exhibit B, Probable Cost Summary, is speculative. So when you combine the probable and estimated division for the use of those funds as written in the exhibit, it's speculative, which requires us to use the language in Section 16, which states it is at SURA's sole option as directed by the town. The agreement doesn't completely define civic space, but we have the ProStack survey results to provide taxpayers, the towns, guidance on some of the civic space inclusions: a recreation center, an indoor pool, and a possible library. So the town has $10 million. It's a head start on the construction of a civic space that could include a rec center, indoor pool, and possible library, all of which we have taxpayers' input articulated through ProStack to the town board. And my opinion is that the town of Superior is never again going to have a $10 million head start on the construction of anything, much less a rec center, indoor pool, and possible library. So, if the $10 million is not enough to accomplish this, then let's start thinking of ways to have that money work for us, like matching grant funds. Let's have the town staff start writing grant applications to use that $10 million as possible matching funds, or evaluate a joint partnership with an existing health club that wants to co-locate their facility in the new town center but can't afford the entire building cost. I'm saying let's think out of the box. I've got 2 more sentences, sorry. So we have a chance here, I'm skipping to the end, we have a chance here and now to get what we want. And my ideas for that, the use of that $10 million are just suggestions, but we need to thoroughly consider and evaluate the possibilities.
Okay.
Thank you
for your comments.
Sorry, it was.
Thank you.
Okay.
Time pressed.
Tricia.
Hi, Patricia Dunham, 3574 Huron Peak, but tonight I'm here speaking as the chairperson of the Open Space Advisory Committee. We wanted to come tonight and speak because we didn't get our notes to you prior to the last board meeting, and they weren't in your packet until you got here tonight. So we just wanted to discuss what we had talked about with our recommendations around the Town Center Creek Corridor, and that would involve parcels 1 and 2 that were discussed at the last meeting. So our recommendations for the board are that the riparian corridor should be protected with a buffer zone that is well delineated by a suitable separation, that would have hardy plantings are suggested to create a buffer to help withstand future flood erosion and foot traffic. These plantings should be at a minimum the width of the riparian corridor plus the buffer. Our feeling on the concept for those parcels, that it should be based on the creek corridor and the habitat and not on the field design, because it seems every time we see one of these designs, it's around the fields and not around the creek corridor, which we feel is one of the assets of the town. We recommend that the preservation of the creek corridor for the enjoyment of town residents in a natural of a state as possible, while still remaining aesthetically pleasing. We do recommend that there's trails on both sides, both the north and south side of the creek corridor, so that people can enjoy walking both areas. We don't feel that artificial turf is fundamentally, we feel artificial turf is fundamentally incompatible with the natural resource values of the creek corridor, and that we recommend a lighting study be completed prior to any light plan decision to determine if that has any impact on the nocturnal wildlife activities. But I did want to come tonight because we know that you guys are getting these in your notes, and if you had any questions for us, or I can just leave it at the comment.
Thank you very much. Additional public comment.
Brian Hill, 2110 Kyoto Lane. Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to staff. I went to the retreat last week, and they really went out of their way to make the visitors feel welcomed. And I thought the discussion amongst the town board were really productive. It really went smoothly. The second item is I went to the historic rail presentation last week, and I got here late. The parking lot was just packed. I've never seen as many cars as perhaps traffic court day. It was it was full. I had to park out on the street. It was crazy. But you know, there might be some opportunity to integrate some of the historic features presented by Mr. Dorsey, maybe into our BRT station. Might be plaques or old fares from that period, something of interest, something I would connect it with today. And then I just want to make a little shout out here to Safeway. You know, my wife travels internationally pretty frequently, and now her new little thing is instead of taking a private car or taxi from the airport to her hotel, she takes public transportation. And she has had some pretty wild experiences, but you know, she's traveling in Russia, Poland, Italy, Spain, just a lot of different places. But it's really nice, you know, because I can just take her down to the bus station. She can jump on that sky ride and get to the airport in any kind of weather. It's always very reliable. And but as far as Safeway goes, I just want to give a shout out to them, because we can always go there and get a sky ride ticket or a regional ticket, or there's a variety of different RTD tickets and passes that they offer, and it's a nice benefit to a lot of people up in Rock Creek especially. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Additional public comment.
Good evening. Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce. Many of you mentioned the manager and the mayor's presentation that was given over lunch on Friday, and on behalf of the chamber, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to kind of co-host that event. There were over 40 people that filled the firehouse, much like the parking lot was here for the historical event. I think the parking lot around the firehouse was a little jam-packed too. Thank you very much for that opportunity, and let you know that we had over 20 of those people in attendance were business owners that not only lived in this community, but a few of them did not, and they wanted to know more about our community, so they appreciated that opportunity to learn about the basics of our community and what they appreciate getting to know. So thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Any more public comment? Okay, one more.
That's the most public comment we've had in a long time.
I know. It's
And the least number of members in the audience.
That's great.
Peter Bottomley, ProStack Chair. I just wanted to read to you real quick the recommendation that ProStack made unanimously at our meeting on April 15th. It was, the committee feels that the current design concept that reflects the $2 million budget does not meet the standard for parks within the town. Further, the design does not meet the expectation of what was discussed during the public engagement process. If the board wants to continue developing the park at the $2 million budget, the committee feels that additional public engagement is needed to realign with public expectations. And then just to summarize a couple of the specific concerns that we had. The first was parking. We felt that the parking bump outs on Indiana, which you'll see when for those of you who haven't seen the design, are insufficient in number for the size park, as well as their location is inconvenient as they're downhill from and a long distance to the core park area. The committee felt strongly that parking should be considered off of West Torrey's Peak or return to the original parking loop off Indiana, which you'll see in the board packet was also favored by BVSD's senior planner. We were also concerned about the lack of amenities. If the one amenity that's in the park design now, being the single track trail, is removed, then there's no active amenities in this design. And we felt that at a minimum, the board should consider adding a large park shelter and a few other amenities that came out of the public process. Examples of those would have been basketball court, sand volleyball, natural play area. We also felt that for the size of the park and the distance to many of the homes south of Colton, that there should be serious consideration for a restroom, whether or not that's a restroom built at the initial phasing of the park or the infrastructure put in to allow one to come in later. We were concerned also about the number of plantings, the cost of those plant materials, as well as the cost of sod versus grass. We just thought there was an excessive number of trees and buffer plantings for the at least initial phase of the park. I mean, you can always add those over time, but the cost is, as you'll see in the budget, is quite large. And then finally, there's no longer any connectivity to the school. We felt that that was a practical connection for several reasons, including additional parking and access to the school that would divert car and pedestrian traffic away from Indiana. And that was another recommendation in the BVSD senior planner's letter, that you revisit the earlier design with connectivity to the park. And then finally, if you do intend to treat this revised concept plan as a first step with additional amenities to be added later, like was previously discussed with phasing, but no longer is discussed in this revised plan, you should revisit the phased approach so that you are accommodating the initial design to take those amenities later, rather than just do a park and then figure out what fits later on. Build it first to make it fit later. So that's all.
Okay, thanks for the comments. And just to clarify, we're going to do, I'll be asking for public comment at item,
Specifically, yeah.
at item number 8, so you can address those at that time. So any other public comment on consent or non-agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to presentations. US 36 Commuting Solution, presentation on EcoPass.
Thank you, Mayor. The town is a member of a 36 Commuting Solutions, which is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to enhance the mobility of commuters along US 36. Organization includes local governments as well as a variety of public and private entities from throughout the region. Scheduled time tonight for Audrey Barros, who's the executive director of the organization, to provide an overview of the US 36 Master EcoPass pilot program and the superior organizations participating in it. Audrey.
Thank you, Mayor, Board of Trustees, and Town Manager. I appreciate the opportunity to give you just a very brief update on a construction mitigation program that 36 Commuting Solutions is implementing as part of the US 36 Express Lanes project. We know that traveling US 36 is quite challenging right now, and thankfully the corridor will be opening in early 2016. But in the meantime, we are implementing a social marketing program to reduce traffic congestion when commuters need it the most. We have implemented, starting in September of 2014, a social marketing campaign, a branded identity campaign. I'm sure you've seen it. Curb Your Frustration is the name of the program. And we are also offering travel incentives to encourage solo drivers who to make the switch and give transit, carpooling, van pooling a try when the corridor needs the help the most. In addition, we are piloting a Master EcoPass pilot program. This corridor and this program has never been implemented at RTD before. A Master EcoPass program allows employees within a quarter mile of 3 park and rides to a free RTD bus pass in 2015 and a steeply discounted pass program in 2016. And I'm pleased to offer that program to the town of Superior and to your staff. This is the visual identity of our campaign that we kicked off, as I said, in the fall. And we appreciated the opportunity to put a banner on the town's fence railing where a number of commuters, thousands of commuters actually saw the banner. And I'm sure you saw the campaign on RTD bus boards, the Arista parking garage, et cetera. The program, in March, we completed our 6th month, and we're off to a great start. There are over 920 employees and 25 businesses who have been given the RTD EcoPass. We have created 6 new van pools serving the US 36 corridor, and 36 new van pool seats have been filled on existing van pools. And we have added about 146 carpoolers to the My Way to Go Dr. Cog regional rideshare program. Top reasons why people are participating in the program: they want to reduce their stressful commute, which I think is a great resource that we are offering to our residents and employees. They're tired of traffic congestion. They would like our free RTD 10-ride ticket book. At least they're honest, right? They want to be environmentally friendly, and they want to save money. Our program goal in terms of overall participation outside of the Master EcoPass program is 833 participants. Based upon the money that we have available for the program and the strategies that we've identified, we feel like this is a reasonable and attractive number for us to get into the program. And so far, we've garnered 597 people. Of those, you'll see that the majority of them are interested in the RTD 10-ride ticket book, 178 in carpooling, 53 people in van pooling, and there are more people who want to get into the EcoPass program but unfortunately are not eligible. As part of this program, we need to conduct pre- and post surveys to evaluate the effectiveness of this program to reduce solo driving, and what we're seeing is that the program is reducing solo driving by about 31% compared to people, how they were driving before they received the incentive to compare to 6 months after they actually received it. So we know that we are having a difference in how people are choosing to travel in our corridor longer term. Some of our next steps coming up, we are just starting a pilot program for the Arista development, which is a transit-oriented development where the First Bank Center is located, where we're providing very high-level customer service to help those employees and residents understand their commute options. You will soon be seeing a second paid advertising campaign focused exclusively on ride-sharing during the Phase 1 opening of the US 36 Express lanes from Westminster to Broomfield. That's coming up this summer here. There will be announcements soon on that opening. And of course, we will be starting this fall to offer the Master EcoPass program for 2016. And you'll see here, this is one testimonial from a business located in Broomfield. The EcoPass has turned into a very popular benefit at Return Path. Our employees are so excited to participate in the program. Thank you, 36 Commuting Solutions, for giving us the opportunity to take part in this fantastic program. In your meeting packet, I had included a double-sided document that lists all the businesses that are participating in the Master EcoPass program. So you'll see on the second page that for the McCaslin station, on the Superior side, we have 9 employers and 371 employees who are participating. Banfield Pet Hospital, Buffalo Wild Wings, Great Clips, Panda Express, Panera Bread, PetSmart, TJ Maxx, Town of Superior, and Whole Foods. So some of your largest employers are now using this program, and I wish I had some testimonials to share with you, but I do know that we are making a difference in people's lives. These are jobs that are cost sensitive, and transportation costs are a big impact to people's pocketbook. And so I really believe that we are not only helping employees with their daily living expenses, but we're also providing the employers with an employee retention tool. And it's something that, they currently do not have to pay, but next year they will have to contribute to the cost of providing that pass. So on that note, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take them.
Can I ask about something you haven't addressed? I'm paying a lot of attention to the toll for the HOV2 and then which will become HOV3 lane. Could you update our residents as to what that toll looks like it may eventually be?
Well, this past week, the High Performance Transportation Enterprise hosted a public meeting. In the week prior, they've hosted a telephone town hall meeting to seek community input to proposed toll rates that they are considering to offer. The toll rate going from Interlochen to Denver Union Station is proposed to be $7.60. Without an express toll account. And if you don't have, or with an express toll account, if you don't have an express toll account, it's over $13.
Each way?
Each way. So it's in all of our residents' interest to obtain an express toll account and to obtain a switchable transponder, which will allow you to declare, if you are carpooling, declare that carpool trip, and then you won't be charged to travel in the express lane. Does that make sense?
On the topic of those switchable transponders, I just went on to expresstoll.com myself and updated my account to request one. They're on back order now, so you're not going to get one until they come in stock. But that is something that people can do right now, is go ahead and request those. Just a couple of clicks and you'll get one requested. They're $15 a piece. And
you pay now.
Right.
Just to follow up.
Get later.
Yeah, just to follow up on this, I just took a close look at my Northwest Parkway E470 toll bill. It just sort of, it has to automatically renew, so you sort of lose track of it until you really sit down and do your own audit on it. And it's roughly now $20 round trip from Superior to DIA and back. And, these costs are material. They're really expensive. This doesn't affect you, Audrey, because I guess it's not 36, it's probably out of your bailiwick. But I think for us as trustees, and certainly Dr. Cog and whatnot, these tolls are really becoming quite high. So whatever we can do for our residents to keep them affordable.
I think the counterpoint to that, though, is these are options for people not to sit in traffic, and these high tolls are what's paying for the options for people not to sit in traffic. So you don't have to use the Northwest Parkway to DIA. You don't have to use the toll lanes that are going to be built on 36.
No, but we do want that capability available to all residents, not just those who can afford them, is my point. You know, it should not become an economic barrier.
Well, an additional counterpoint is there's intended to encourage bus transportation.
Right.
So that would be the preferable mode, take the bus and not use the.
Well, unfortunately,
Toll
the bus pass is $13 each way. So anyway, it's just, it sort of takes your breath away when you have to do it.
Yeah, when you have to pay. And that brings me to the point that when I was looking at your two-page double-sided, or your document there, the Superior focus, of course, I think will be more on bus passes versus van pools or anything like that. And so, and I see that the passes for the Superior side of McCaslin are 371 versus 135 for Louisville. Is that because you're only going within a quarter mile of the BRT?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And there's a lot of businesses, you know, I think about in the rest of Louisville, or even the, you know, maybe not in Superior. I think we cover most of our location, our town, with a quarter mile kind of a concept. But even Interlochen, there's so many businesses along there. When we used to have an office in Interlochen, we provided bus passes to our employees, you know, like this. So I would like to see that expanded, you know, heavy focus continuing on providing reduced costs or better, you know, buying more for less or something. But the focus on how do you get a reduced bus rate from our Superior BRT to anywhere, whether it's to the downtown Denver or to Boulder or to the airport. We would be interested, I would be, in keeping the cost as low as possible for people who want to buy passes that allow them to ride on the bus from our BRT. So, you know, and to expand it even further, then we're lucky because we're small, we're close, our quarter mile, we're really close to do that EcoPass trial, but we just need to continue to look for ways to give our residents and the residents along the 36 corridor here the opportunity to get bus passes at a reduced cost than if they just bought them.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Williams.
And I'm just asking an operational question. The HOV that you take from Denver that, you know, spits you out at Pecos here on US 36, you can use a little strip, you know, those transponders that are tiny little stickies,
Yes.
stickers. And does that work? Will that work for switching back and forth between, and you're saying no, but it works currently now if I use that in that HOV lane and I have 3 people in the car or 2 people in the car. So how is that, why is that different? What is the component for changing it?
You can continue to use your sticker transponder. However, you won't receive the benefit of carpooling and getting the free toll use in the express lane unless you declare and use the switchable transponder.
But you don't need it now, that's what I'm asking.
Well, the
What's the
difference is, on I-25, you've got 2 lanes, and you move your vehicle over to select. On US 36, there's 1 lane, and so
Okay.
you move your switch to select.
I get it.
Because you can't move your vehicle to select.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you for the information.
That was a good answer.
Hey, you learn a lot when you go to all
That's a
these
good
meetings.
answer,
and I
yes.
feel accomplished that I can answer these questions now. See,
There
a
you
couple
go.
of months ago, I didn't have a clue of any of this. Okay. Item number 7 is consent agenda. We've pulled 7E, so you want to, should we do the consent? Should we do 7E?
We'll do
or should
consent
we-
first, and then we'll do
Okay.
7E after.
All right, let's do the consent agenda first. Let's see, are we spending money?
Yep.
We are spending money, as we usually do, so let's have a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda, items 7A through
D.
D.
Okay, motion by trustee Sorelli, second by trustee Hansen. Roll call vote.
Trustees Joe Cirelli,
Yes.
Rita Dozell,
Yes.
Chris Hansen,
Yes.
Deborah Williams,
Yes.
Julia DeVore.
Yes.
Sam. Yes?
I said yes.
I'm going to make a comment before, because I should have pulled this. Please have a portable mic in the new configuration so our presenters can actually walk around up there. I forgot to pull it. I was going to do that, but yes.
And Mayor Paulson.
Yes. Okay, that passes unanimous. Okay, 7E.
You want me to go ahead? Okay.
Yes.
I pulled this because I'm reading the actual signed, executed agreement dated 3rd of November 2014, which is asking, based on that agreement, they're asking for an extension of 90 days, which is allowed under item 4, evaluation period of this agreement, but it also says that the purchaser may at its election, exercised by written notice, delivered to seller at least 7 days prior to the end of the evaluation period, extend the evaluation period up to 2 additional periods of up to 90 days each. This is what we're asking to approve tonight, is an extension of one 90-day period. But it goes on to say, purchaser shall increase the earnest money by $25,000 paid to the title company concurrently with delivery of each such notice of extension, which shall be applied to the purchase price as said above. So I had asked the question, where's the have we received the $25,000 along with the request to extend the additional 90 days?
So what we've done, or what the amendment does, is it actually changes the original 180 days in the evaluation period in Section 4 of the original agreement to 270 days. And then also gives them 2 additional 90-day options. So basically, if you want the extra $25,000 now, you would say no to this amendment. Then they would send us a letter basically saying, we exercise our option anyway. What you would be agreeing to tonight is to give them 90 days, but also give them 2 more 90-day options. So that's why it's presented like this.
They could also terminate.
Right.
If they didn't want to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But that's not their intent. Their intent is to get the extension.
Sure.
So my question was just, I asked, did they submit the $25,000 along with the extension? And then it wasn't clear, no one really knew what was happening, so.
Sure, yeah, the way that they've set it up is so that they don't have to post this original $25,000, and so that they get basically 90 days now plus 2 90-day extensions if they need them later.
So the way, if the board were to approve this amendment,
we're changing the agreement.
Right.
We're not
Exactly.
providing the extension.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
So okay, now that's the first time I understood it that way. I was thinking that we were actually just giving them the extension, which they're allowed under the agreement.
Yeah.
So then, what's the benefit to the town? I mean, which is the better? Why would we do this, and rather than just let them extend 90 days and per the agreement?
Well, the 90-day extension is at their option, so it's just a risk factor for the town.
But we know
they
they're
may
not-
choose not to extend.
But we don't, that's not their intent. That's our expectation is that.
Our
that's-
expectation is they would.
That's not
yeah.
their intent. I just asked a question because I read the document, and I thought, why aren't they providing that?
Mhm.
So,
Right.
Any other questions?
I'll make one last comment.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we have signed documents and agreements and contracts, we should live by them, unless there's a real specific reason not to. And what they're asking for is a 90-day agreement, an extension that was already allowed for in the original agreement, but instead of going by the original agreement, we're amending the original agreement to give them what was in there, but now we're giving them an extra 90 days. So it seems like we always go through extra effort when we just should follow the documents and the agreements that we already have in place. And this happens a lot, I find, throughout the years, is that we Instead of going by the agreement and the contracts that we've signed, we tend to amend them, and I don't always think that's in the best interest of the town to do that. I'm not saying that here. I'm just saying, we had a contract, everybody's in agreement, they want a 90-day extension, they can get a 90-day extension. We should have done that without having to go through the amendment process.
So I had
Okay. Trustee Guerrero.
just a comment that, in general, as a principle, I agree with you, but I think we also need to be flexible enough and think the big picture is, this is a great company, and we don't want them to pull out. If they need an extra 90 days to do what they need to do to come back and hopefully invest in our town and build in the town center.
I'm not having a
it's
problem
important.
with them. I'm
I
having a
know.
problem with how we administer our agreements and contracts that the problem is us, not them.
Well, and part of the reason for this extension is to get them and us to this retail conference that's coming up at the end of May. When the contract was signed back in November, the direction to them was find a sit-down restaurant. They came back a couple of months ago and said, guys, it isn't happening. And now we're kind of going, we're exploring some other options, and part of that exploration is going to this retail conference to get additional options. So, so I agree with you in principle, but part of the reason for the extension is kind of our own doing, and so therefore, I think part of the flexibility on our part, on the town's part, is justified, given the set of
No
events.
conflict with that.
Right.
I again have a procedural process issue. that
Devil's
needs-
advocate here, along the lines of what Rita was saying, and again, this is just in general, not regarding New Merrill specifically, we tend to be on the receiving end of this. The Ethan Allen pad, whatever, we keep extending, and the other party may have no real intention to do anything, but they get the benefit of our extension. So we have to distinguish when it's in our interest and when it's not in our interest, and know when to cut bait.
Understood.
So I totally agree with you. There's a huge difference between Ethan Allen, which I think there was probably a mistake to extend it again, and I wouldn't vote to extend it again. I hope they never come before us and ask for another extension. And Newmark Merrill, I think there's like two different categories that aren't even in the same ballpark.
I'll do it one time with Newmark Merrill, but I don't think they should be encouraged to come again to ask.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? Somebody want to make a motion?
Are we reading something?
Yes, Rita.
Resolution, okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-25, Series 2015, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a First Amendment to the purchase and sale agreement with Newmark Merrill Mountain States LLC.
Second.
Motion by trustee Guerrero, second by trustee Hansen. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Okay, thank you. All right, next is item number 8, review of El Dorado K-8 site park design review.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff and our consultants have been working on this proposed park next to El Dorado K-8's school. They have some options to show you that include options for amenities as well as parking and some other items, which they'll review for you, take any questions you might have, and see if you have any direction moving forward for staff.
Just a quick question. The ProStack chair gave a little presentation, and he reinforced what I thought I read, BVSD. Didn't we hear before that BVSD didn't want that pull-in loop?
No.
No, we heard that they said, no, we didn't want it because it created more of a hazard. So I'm
That
wondering-
was something you heard from my staff, our Public Works Director. He's concerned about traffic, pedestrian conflicts at the entry-exit point.
So that was never the principal at El Dorado?
No.
Or,
No.
okay.
No, yeah.
I don't think we've heard formally from them until.
I included in your packet.
Yeah, no, that's why I was
a
surprised to see that,
letter
and
from the
I agree with you
Well-
100%.
To key in on what Chris is asking, that was a major a major communication, because you know better than I, but I heard that ProStack then had to retool, and Design Concepts had to retool, because that was taken very seriously, and these iterations that have come forward, that was taken out of. So it created quite a bit of work. And so in the future, when we say those things, we've got to be very clear about who was saying them, because I too thought it was BBSD that had some BBSD personnel, whether from the school directly or from administrative offices, that had said that won't work.
That's exactly what I had heard, was BBSD personnel had said. Who said that? I don't know.
No, I remember. Why don't we let's get on with the presentation, and then we'll wrap this into comments afterwards. Yes. Thank you.
Patrick Hammer, town staff, and I have Bill and Shannon here with Design Concepts, and I think the best thing to do is probably to jump right into the slides. There's a number of slides, a number of different options, including parking, as the town manager mentioned. We've also put a slide in that has the original parking loop in there. So I won't go too much into the backstory, because I think we're all really aware of it, and have Bill and Shannon just start in the presentation.
Bill Gotthof, Design Concepts. So this exercise, as I think you know, was a look at what can we do on this parcel in response to the previous phased plan that was in the $5-6 million range. What can we do in one phase in around the $2 million range with this parcel and without the school loop? So what we're looking at is still developing the entire north parcel, the entire 12.11 acres up there, as well as the right-of-way surrounding that. So you can see the white line is the approximate parcel boundary, and so there's a fair amount of right-of-way that's also included in that, probably another couple acres. Starting up along South Indiana, this is an idea that I think we've introduced before. That was in how can we put parking and drop-off for the public, for the general public, and for BSD along South Indiana without doing that loop that came into the park. This concept was to have these parallel parking / pull-offs, about 200 linear feet, 3 of those, probably 8 or 9 cars each comfortably, 8 cars comfortably, 9 a little bit tighter. Widen the sidewalk in those areas so that people walking up the sidewalk and people opening their car doors and letting kids out don't conflict there. So enabling anywhere from 24 to 27, a little under 30 cars to simultaneously drop off their kids and walk without crossing a street up to Eldo K8 and without pulling in or out at a 90-degree intersection from the park. The other pieces of this were tying together the neighborhood path connections along that lower, currently kind of graded out gravel service drive that's there, including a large large park loop that's wide enough for multi-use, roughly probably a third of a mile around, having a neighborhood connection to West Torrey's in this vicinity, where which is where, if you can read these topo lines, where West Torrey's meets currently about the same grade as this upper terraced out area of the park, and these hatched areas are existing or somewhat augmented sloping areas. That's one of the challenges in developing this park, is the amount of grade change and the existing slopes. Also, potentially one of the things that makes it different and exciting compared to other parks. Fairly limited amenities, as Peter was talking about. We have some single track in order to find a fun and economical way to use all these sloping areas. To have 3 foot wide or so, pressure fines pass, it'd be fun for neighborhood kids, and also provides shortcuts. So if you pull off and use one of these parking areas and you don't want to walk in this way, or you'd rather kind of traverse up the slope, it gives you options for that. Looks at, in addition to being used for that purpose, just what are the possible or probable social trails that would develop along here, and let's develop them first and formalize them. In the next slide, looking at, 2.2 million was our rough estimate of what it would take to develop that. And then, as Peter was saying, not a lot of amenities. So kind of giving you an a la carte menu, like what if? What if we introduced a restroom to this parcel? Where might it go? How much might it cost? This looks like a pretty good location for it in terms of economizing, because it's close to the utility connections that we would need that are running under West Torreys. It's near a park entrance. It's at this, it serves this upper terrace area well. Over on the right, we have kind of the conceptual costs associated with that, and these costs are calculated on what we think is typical town of Superior standards that you would find in your other parks, not sort of necessarily your lowest off-the-shelf price, but what we think that you would probably want. We have some graphics to show you examples of what I'm talking about in a later slide. If you wanted to put a basketball court, this is the approximate location that we had located basketball in the previous iteration, in the phased set of plans that we had done, and the thought was it tucks it away in kind of its own space where there aren't conflicts. It's nestled in this area that's well buffered from the neighborhood, and rough cost on that, about $24,000 or so. We think on the soils that you have here, it's worth investing in a post-tension concrete slab so that it's going to last. Sand volleyball, if you wanted to put in another court, which is another item that we had in the previous plan, to make that maybe a central feature of this lower leg of the big open space down here. About $18,000, $19,000, we think. If you wanted, on the previous plan, we didn't have a playground. There are other playgrounds nearby, here and here. But in the other plan, we sort of, as you traversed around the park and took the paths, we sort of had dispersed play activities for different ages, multi-ages. So if you wanted to introduce one of those, one of the ones that we had in the previous plan was a multi-age net climber that a lot of kids could hang out on at once, and it's not really exclusive to one age or another. Makes a little feature here, and it's got good proximity to most of the park there. We think in the neighborhood of $75,000 for a really big one, and the play pit, the safety servicing, and furnishings and things that you would probably want to do associated with that. And the last amenity that we looked at was if you wanted a large group pavilion in the park. We looked at this corner here. Seemed like an interesting spot in terms of having it up on a promontory, so you'd have a great view out east across the open space, as well as a good view, a long view across the open lawn here. So it seemed like a dramatic location. Plus, it would kind of mark the park, since there's a lot of open space and slope as you come to the park. Having kind of a beacon of the park up here as you're driving by would be kind of cool. And we think in the neighborhood of 150,000 for the types of shade structures that we see in other parks. Just some existing photographs to help illustrate some of the concepts I'm talking about. So Indiana over here, you can see a little car there. This is that existing service drive that comes up. So you can see how much grade change there is here. Here's a car, and you can see this is the top of where that central field is, and then that's kind of that point where it meets grade with West Torrey's, and then West Torrey's keeps going up. View across West Torrey's, that flat field area. And in order to economize to the extent that we can for 2.2 million, we're trying to present a concept that works with these existing grades as much as possible. Just looking up the center line of this road that we're looking at the profile of here, and then just the existing walk coming up Indiana. This is kind of the park character that we have in mind. So if you think about that central lawn, the dark green open sod area, sort of, and ringed by more native-looking, less irrigated open space, and kind of using walks as the delineators, and kind of accentuating the grades of the park. This is the character that we have in mind. And those amenities that we were looking at, we think you probably want something the equivalent of what you have, for example, at Purple Park, where it has a nice standing seam roof, nice exposed beams. You wrap the columns in stone. It's not your basic off-the-shelf pavilion, which is why we priced it accordingly. The multi-age net climber, your existing restroom standards, and then basic sand volleyball court, basketball court. Here's some sections, some profile sections that we looked at to help better explain. So from the neighborhood up here, when we keep talking about this buffer area coming down to the park, what does that look like in profile? So from an existing house here and their fence, that's a way to look at the slope and the distance of that buffer down to the field. So a pretty nice separation there, and also a nice view when you're in the park, kind of looking into open space, not looking directly into someone's backyard. So nice from both directions. Another section, this one, looking more or less west, cutting across here from the upper lawn down towards the existing detention area. So here's the upper lawn up here. This is that concrete path that's ringing the lawn, and then that slope, kind of a gradual but pretty substantial slope, cutting down to this neighborhood connection down here. And you can see that this kind of maze of single tracks down here, when you actually look at what that is in scale, there's a pretty good separation between those two paths. You got a lot of room to work with here. And then the slope down towards the detention. Last one, from the top up here, sloping down to Indiana, what does that look like? So here's people playing on the upper lawn there. Again, the concrete perimeter path here, and then you start sloping down, kind of the native open space slope with some single tracks cutting across it. You get down to Indiana, nice tree lawn, the sidewalk, Indiana Street. There's, of course, a couple different ways if you wanted to bring parking into the park, which the previous concept did not have any. It's just relying on the street parking and the parallel parking here. So if you did come off West Torrey's Peak Drive, you'd probably want to bring the parking into the park a little bit in order to buffer it from the neighborhood. So that's why we're showing a single bank of parking spaces here, not double banked, because that would kind of take your buffer away. But you could get more parking spaces in by doing that. So just an idea of what that might look like and a rough cost. kind of inclusive of the curb and gutter and the grading, the asphalt, striping, is probably just under $300,000 for a small parking loop like that. And then the parking loop that we've been alluding to from the old scheme, that would also, well, that was originally intended to also facilitate via BVSD drop-off. This is not showing that. But a long loop with parallel parking, at least on one side, you could do it on both, but it would be more grading, pretty wide swath of concrete. So we put it to one side, a loop. And rough cost on that, we think, is in the neighborhood of $630,000, and the bulk of that is, well, I mean, there's a lot of things that feed into that cost. There's a lot more asphalt, there's a lot more concrete, curb and gutter, and so forth with this, but a lot of it is also just the grading of widening out this terrace for that distance and then cutting in here. What this also does, though, is give you kind of a nice front door to the park where the other one doesn't have that, at least off South Indiana. And that's it.
Okay. Should we do? Public comment first? Let's do an option for public comment. I will open it back up for public comment towards the end of our questions and discussions, but if you would rather do public comment now and perhaps go home and watch the rest of this on TV, then you have that option. So I'll open it up for public comment. If you'd just come on up and state your name and address.
If you look at the second slide.
Could state your name and address, please.
Ranajit Talukdar on Opal Lane.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you could look at the second slide. Sure. And go back. Wait. Okay.
This one?
Yeah, this one. This distance here looks like not very long. It's probably 200 feet, something like that.
Yeah.
That's too close, actually. Could you not move in a plan? Could you not move a little bit further? My house is not even there, but I think a lot of people who are not here at this time, present here, but they can kind of feels very close. So that's all.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody else like to make comments now?
For clarification, we can make a public comment now and a public comment later as well?
Yes.
Same presenter. I'm Kevin Ryan, 3101 West Torreys Peak Drive. We've got I'll show one of my favorite slides here. Hold on, wait. I'm the house right on the exit lane on the dangerous West Torreys Peak, 3101, and I will also be the house directly across from the proposed bathroom. So excited about both those.
Could you show me where it?
Sure. My house is this one here.
Okay.
So it looks like the potential restroom is here. So first, I was generally surprised by the ProStack recommendation. I'm kind of confused by the recommendation. It looks like they're not supportive of the park at the 2.2 million. And I don't know if that's because it should be more or it should be phased differently. I was surprised by that recommendation. I was very participatory in all the public sessions. Do not think this should go back to public comment. It's a big piece of land, 12.1 acres, 14 or 15 acres when you start including the actual school parcel. It's reasonable that it's going to be $200,000 to $300,000 per acre. It wasn't a surprise to me that it was $3 million, $4 million. I don't think it was a surprise to a lot of folks. I think the surprise was there was a $2 million budget, and so people were presented with options. Do you want a sand volleyball court? Do you want a movie theater? Do you want parking? And people got very excited about this. And they said, yeah, we want all these things. I think if we went back and said, what do you want? And if you go back and you read those comments, people want a community park. That's what's most important to them. I don't remember seeing any comment that they wanted a restroom, which is the first proposed amenity that will be added. I don't remember any public comment saying that anybody wanted parking, especially off West Torreys Peak. There were some public comments about the option for an additional school drop-off, but there was some miscommunication around that. And so I think we need to be very careful about communicating to town staff and to the developers who have done a great job, or to the designers who have done a great job on proposing this plan, what the feedback was around that parking loop. Because I also thought it was from El Dorado, and then I talked to the principal, and she said, no. She was very excited about having that ability to have that parking. So, but she wasn't speaking for the school as a whole. It was just her personal opinion. I think the previous, when I was here last in October, we talked about phasing, and I thought the direction was around 3 phases, and that seems to somehow have been lost in this design a bit, or at least in the ProStack recommendation, implying that we're going to go back to the phasing. I think the direction from the board was in fact phasing. So I think this design meets well, matches well to the phased approach. And finally, for those that are participating here, the graphics are really helpful, and it's interesting to see the slope. Go for a walk out on this. My kids do it almost every day. I laugh when I hear people saying that there's no connector between West Torrey's Peak and the school. There's at least 10 kids that do that walk every day. And there's already things that exist with, I mean, it's open space. They've taken out the no trespassing sign, and so the kids are in there. Kids are being kids. But there's a big rock in there, and they call it Big Rock, and they race from Big Rock to Snake Hole. I mean, this is a cool, really beautiful spot. And so if you're making judgments on where basketball courts should go and sand volleyball courts, go for a walk out there. Ask my kids, ask some of the other neighborhood kids to take you for a walk. Take a look at the vista from there. It's a beautiful vista, and I think it easily could be spoiled by putting restrooms and other amenities that may disturb from the vista. So eager to hear what your feedback is, and we'll likely be back up for final comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone for additional comments right now?
Patricia Dunham, 3574, Huron Peak. So I live down by the South Pool, but my family would use this as a community park. So I do want to say, my husband and I actually would like a bathroom. You can argue about where you want it, but our house isn't close enough that our kids could use this and get back to use the bathroom. The other thing, as far as amenities go, we have a lot of tot lots in the area, so if any type of playground thing, I think it should be for maybe a little bit of an older age group or things like that, as opposed to for the younger kids. Those already exist within the neighborhoods. I know that there are sort of these natural paths that have happened between El Dorado K-8 and this area right now, and I would like to see that continue or be more formal, because my kids do go to El Dorado K-8 and will be for the next 8 years, so I'd like to see the school be able to use this park during the day if they wanted to do outside classrooms or things like that. And then finally, the parking, I actually do a crossing guard shift once a week. I've been doing it for the last 2 years. I think that really has to be thought of all these drop-offs and things, because if you go out there during those commuting times, there is a lot of congestion, so I do think that has to be thought through thoroughly. I don't know if it's putting the loop in, if it is the things on the side, but there is a lot of congestion during those drop-offs in the morning and then the afternoon, so anything that can either alleviate that or not contribute more to it would be ideal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments now? We're going to open it up later. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Williams would like to kick us off.
All right, so I have several points I want to make. First of all, in this presentation in the packet, it was a little confusing in the fact that it was difficult to determine what I'm looking at, what plan is what. Is this a new plan? Is this an added-on plan? Just the labeling of it was a little screwy, in my opinion. But more importantly, I was hoping to see the past iterations we had already looked at. I think it was back in October. So I could compare where we were, where we are now, and where we're heading. And I had to do some major hunting to see what those schematics look like. So we're very different. We're vastly different from those. So I'm wondering how we got there. And I think at this point, if we're talking about the cost, and if we're looking at a specific number, and we were asking, what does 2.2 million buy us here? What's that look like? And I'm looking at what I think is one possibility with a bunch of add-ons that go over the 2.2. And as I'm looking at this, thinking, well, shoot, let me sit here and design my own park and figure out 2.2 million. So I'm wondering if you thought about reducing the size of the park. I think there's two choices here. You could reduce the size of the park and include the amenities that we already had for the public engagement process. Or you could increase the budget to include these amenities, which is what you're showing here is these add-ons. So that got a little messy to me. So I see it as we've got two things here. We either choose to build a park within the 2 million that has all these amenities that the public wants and what we feel we need for this property, or we increase the budget. And so part of the things I wanted to see in this and what we had before in the first or the last iteration before this in October is we had connectivity to the school.
Can we actually have staff call up the previous design? Why, so we know what you're referring to?
That's fine, if you want.
But can you leave that over for a little bit while we make some comments
Okay,
on this design first? Yeah.
there was connectivity to the school, which I think is absolutely essential. There's a lot more amenities, which were amenities that the public had talked about for the last 3-4 years. I won't get into exactly all of them because we can look at them when we bring it up. I don't think there was many shrubs and trees. I think this is extremely overkill. There was not street parking or street improvements. There was the loop. And I think if we look at this, if we're going to do street improvements or parking improvements on the street, I don't think it should come out of the park budget. That is completely separate. I don't feel that this park warrants that.
It doesn't.
I'm sorry?
The parking that you see there on Indiana comes out of our street budget.
It does.
Yes.
So that is not part of this 2.2 million plus all these add-ons and the next add-on and the next add-on, because I saw 600 and...
Yeah. That was for the...
630 for the loop.
Right.
Okay, but that's not including all these others.
The loop and that parking would be...
No, I understand the loop
okay.
is.
Yeah,
That makes sense. Okay, we're seeing eye to eye here. So I just wanted to make sure of that. I think if we're trying to alleviate any kind of traffic issues, then I think that this should be a neighborhood park with lots of amenities, but not anything that is programmed. So I just want to make that clear, that that was never the intent for this particular parcel, that to be a programmed parcel. So that I want to make very clear. But my big concern here is this just lacks ingenuity. I mean, it's incredibly plain, and I understand that you were trying to come up with what you could do with 2.2, but did you think about maybe reducing the size of the park? where that would include 2.2 with very nice amenities. So I don't really want to lose the engagement process and what came out of that. So I would like us to see that other iterations from October, if we can call those out.
Trustee Hansen.
I wanted to clarify something, and Peter, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what the chair of ProStack was saying is, if they were limited to just this here and $2.2 million, that's it. That's why they wanted to go back to the engagement process, because this doesn't include anything that the public had wanted. So they felt that it was totally flawed. One of the discussion items in the ProStack meeting was go back, like Trustee Williams has said, let's look at the original designs when we were talking about phasing. Because if you look at phase one, it actually gives you more than what this is showing. Then you can maybe put phase two a few years out and phase three a few years out further than that, but don't eliminate phasing, because this here you're not getting anything close to what we want. Go ahead.
Are you done, or if you're not finished, go ahead.
Well,
I have a couple
more
comments to make.
something.
I want to piggyback on what you were saying. I think the one that we saw in October was really exciting. This seems boring, for lack of a better word. There's nothing really exciting about it other than it's green. The one thing that I do want to address about, a couple of you made comments on opposing views as far as the restrooms are concerned. I think if you have a size of this particular park, you probably do need to have a restroom, but I certainly wouldn't want to have it in front of your home. I think you can move the restroom closer to Indiana. It doesn't back into anybody's home, basically, but put us far diametrically opposed from where it is right now. People can walk to that side of the park and go use the restroom as anybody else. Unless there's an infrastructure issue, I don't know, Matt, if that's...
Well, I'm assuming you're talking about the southeast corner.
I am.
So you've got a longer linear footage to run the lines from, because with the elevation, you can't pull it from Indiana, you have to pull it from West Torrey, so it's just a longer dig as well.
So it could
So
be
there's some
where
additional costs there.
So if you use the loop, the parking, if you could put the restroom right there at the end of the loop.
Yeah, that'd be an elevation change. Are you talking on the west end?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
you
what
could
one
do.
of the original designs showed.
You're closer to those houses on the...
If we could call
No,
that
not
out.
on the west, I was thinking about
Right,
farther
yeah,
east.
If we call it the original, you'll see it on
Can we talk about this first and then we can pull it up? Because I have a couple.
So those are a couple of
Chris, did you have more?
Yeah, just to continue on with some of the comments that were made about the bathrooms and the pavilion, I agree that the bathroom should actually be closer to the school, and perhaps the pavilion would be closer to the school, because that would be used as an outdoor education piece. So I would suggest that you have the bathrooms closer to the school, because if kids are going to be out there for a school activity, then they've got the bathrooms that are right there real close. And then going back when ProStack originally started reaching out to the community, that was 2+ years ago, and we walked up by the park, we delivered door hangers to all the homes to get them to come to the meetings. That was when the conversation first started about having that pull-in area with the loop, because that was one of the key ideas, was this is a great opportunity to diminish some of the traffic in front of at El Dorado. I think the pullouts are great. I think we should still do those, but if we depended on just those, you're still going to have the traffic problem, because the cars aren't going to do the pullout and then make a U-turn there. They're going to continue on down past El Dorado, so you're really not eliminating any of the traffic issues. Whereas if you have the pullout, that you would eliminate some of the traffic issues. So to me, that's really important. And I do think that since it is somewhat of a public safety issue, that maybe we consider having that come out of a different budget than this budget for the park.
Trustee Dozell and then Pennington.
So I think that phase one that you looked at that you're all saying is more creative, was a lot more money, like twice as much money.
There were 3 phases.
Three.
What was that in the first phase? Does anybody remember how much that was cost?
4.4.
The first phase was?
No.
3.4 was all of it.
Total was
Something, wasn't it?
4.4. 1.8 or something like
Okay.
that.
And then that phasing, and I think too that I don't believe the 2.2 million, is that all in next year's budget?
No, it's.
Oh, that's
split over-
phased.
Yeah, that's phased.
Yeah, so when we're talking phasing, let's make sure we understand what phasing we're talking about. We have a budget phasing of the 2.2, which is spread over like 3 years. And then we have a phasing from the original plan that added up to $4 million for
Correct.
the thing. Okay, so if I look at page 4, which showed the nice paths and trees and grasses and things like that, is that here somewhere, or is that our parks, or no? Okay, when you say here, it's in Colorado. Okay, so if we look at, can you pull up page slide 4 here? Okay, so that's in my mind, when I look at the flat plan, is kind of what we're going to get, with more of a flat central area of sod, but around the edges, you're going to have some trees and grass and paths and things. So this, it looks like a community park to me. I just have to say that if I look at this picture, this is what I'm envisioning we're going to get for $2.2 million, is that with a flatter area for the central field or whatever it's called. I think that parking is absolutely essential. And I never even knew that there was an opportunity, or that the school, about that loop. I think I can see why they would like it. Think about how much parking is taken advantage of at the pool, the North Pool. For the Superior Elementary, it would be the same kind of a concept. How great that is that people use that parking lot at the North Pool for Superior Elementary, I'm sorry. I think I said El Dorado. For Superior Elementary. Now, I can't understand why that loop has to be so dang long,
Slope.
Well, if you're going to excavate, maybe you slope it some other, it just seems like it's really long, and that's what's going to cost us, if we're talking about $650,000 or $630,000, but you've got to have parking in there. Putting parking at the top along Torrey's Peak is nice because it's flat, but you only get 10 spaces. Why would we spend $300,000 to get 10 spaces? I think that's all that we're lined up there. We have to figure out a way to get more parking. If we can get it closer to the school without costing, a third of the cost of or a quarter of the cost of the park for that loop, $600,000. We've got to figure out a way to do that. Have to have a restroom. You can't have a park of that size without a restroom, so people, either young or older like me, can actually get to that restroom. And then the connection with the school's got to be in there too. But so I look at, if we call it Phase 1 or Park View 1, if we get that, which is on page 4 of the presentation, and parking, and a restroom, and a connection to the school, that would be a very good option for the town at this point in time.
Trustee Pennington?
I'm going to start, can we show one of the first couple of maps, designs? I'm going to start with some design details, because I, by full disclosure here, live right, one of those houses right up here, right? So I'm right across the
You
street.
have to learn to use that.
I know, what the heck? I thought I was using it.
No. There you go.
Now I want the dot, there, okay, got it. Where am I? Somewhere right up here.
doing that?
Okay, somebody else put yours down. I believe we need a town board tour. You pick the time, about 10 minutes before school starts every day, or about 10 minutes before school ends every day, or better, both. This has become a mess traffic-wise, right here in this corridor. That is why we now have declared it all school zone, and we spend whatever that budget was for school zone, flashing lights, et cetera. To put single-track trails here, when you have all this traffic is horribly unpredictable. You've got busy kids racing to school on their bikes and on foot. You've got preoccupied kids leaving school, not looking if cars are going through the intersections. You've got drivers who are preoccupied, et cetera. And this looks a little bit more expansive here than it actually is. It's actually a pretty steep slope. And to have kids authorized to race on their bikes so close to these heavily trafficked intersections adds a note of chaos that I don't think we need. It adds danger, and it is a distraction not only for the drivers, but for the kids who are, their parents think they're headed to school, and oh, by the way, they're distracted on the single-track trail. So if we need a single-track trail in town, I suggest we put it at the bike park. This is intended to be somewhat of a peaceful, family-oriented experience, and to put anything single-track to me is dangerous. It's distracting. To think you can park on here in parallel parking and somehow crisscross across that single-track bike traffic up to the park, talk about points of conflict that we're building into the whole thing. So if I could eliminate one thing out of this plan, and I said it at various iterations, it's we must get rid of the single-track trail. If we keep it, we are going to have to make sure that bikes cannot come off that trail by having an accident and go down that slope onto Indiana in front of cars, or down that slope in front of cars on West Torrey's Peak. An option that hasn't been put forth yet is actually putting parking here. What that would entail is flattening that slope out and putting a retaining wall along that edge. But what it also does is it provides some school remediation of the traffic and whatnot. And it doesn't put the parking in front of any particular one set of houses, and it's got to be much cheaper than doing that big loop, right? So I'd like to actually see a cost option, or see if that's ever been explored, about flattening that out and putting about 30 spaces in there.
How far up, Sandy? Because it was brought up in the past of having this actually be a loop through here, so you could drive through. This would be a drop-off area with parking.
Right.
But the slope here is so great that it
Well,
would
you have
be
to deal
cost-prohibitive.
with the slope, and you have to be willing to pay for a retaining wall. But when we're talking about budgets of $630,000 down here, we're talking about a lot of money. So anyway, those are some options. I'm going to disagree with one of my neighbors on Opal Lane here. We've spent a lot of money on landscaping this, when in fact it's a privilege to overlook a park. I overlook some green space behind my house. I don't care if I have a tree separating me from that beautiful lush green lawn, if in fact it's a beautiful green lawn. And in terms of seeing into the yards of the houses, we have those lovely mustard painted 8-foot fences that keep our view from seeing the backyard of our neighbors. So if I could find an economy of scale here, it would actually be to pull back on this berming and pull back on that landscaping. And if you've ever walked the lot, and I do it all the time, this is the flattest area. This requires the least grading, therefore the least cost. So to me, the base of the park should be where it's flattest now and thus least expensive to grade. So I'm a little frustrated when I see this iteration, and I do want to go back, when we get back to it, to look at how far we've come in the wrong direction to get to this layout here. In my opinion, it's very frustrating to me. This neighborhood has been through 4 years of public process on this, and what we're seeing in front of us is probably the least responsive iteration that yet has come forward. If I can speak in vision, Every time we do a park in this town, we try to create an additive vision to this community, added value to this community that isn't necessarily elsewhere in the community. Look what Autry did for us. It gave us disc golf, it gave us bike park, it gave us dog park. Look at what Williams Field did with the turf. Look at the ball fields, they added more. Look at the playground in Community Park, soccer capabilities and a nice play area. This parcel is the only place in town to do some wonderful school-related connectivity to where that the school kids benefit from what we do at the park, if we have the vision to create the linkages. And I don't have elementary school kids, I don't have high school kids, I don't have college kids anymore. This is benefit to the community of providing those linkages. Because if we do it well, I believe Superior Elementary is actually going to do some field trips to this park to take advantage of some of those unique school-related growing gardens and maybe butterfly gardens and whatnot. So I'm a little disappointed that we've lost, possibly. I know we're going to go back to the others. I just don't want us to lose some of the vision that we are capable of achieving here.
Trustee Pennington, just so I can complete my notes, where are you on restroom?
Huh?
Restroom?
Well,
Yes, restroom, no restroom.
you could always come to my house.
Are you sure?
I am.
An 8-year-old soccer team.
I get runners,
First you have garage sales.
joggers who knock on my door. Anyway, yes, we have to have a restroom there. This is intended, hopefully, if it's successful. If it's not going to be successful, let's not do it at all. If we want it to be successful, we want to draw from the whole community here. I don't care what you call it, neighborhood, community, or whatnot.
Okay.
And the farther you're away, you need it. But as Kevin said, you cannot have a restroom right across from somebody's line of sight into the park. It's got to be well situated.
Right. Okay, additional, Trustee Hanson.
Yeah, I just want to kind of keep the same thought of all these trails, and I want to, Peter, again, I'll ask for your assistance if you guys disagree with this. I think ProStack also had an issue with all these trails through here, but there's also some discussion that maybe there is a concrete path that came through here, so that any students that come from north of Colton that go to this school, well, let me back up. The recommendation by the school district was, I think, to have all the kids go on the east side of Indiana and walk up the sidewalk. And I'm not sure why we'd want to have all these kids cross over and then cross back over. So have a cement path that goes through here, so that keeps them off of Indiana. Then they would just transition to the school here. Because there's a lot of kids that would walk from here and then definitely from north of Colton. So what are the thoughts about having some concrete path if we didn't do parking there?
And Chris, where do you see the restroom here? If you do believe.
I see the restroom over here somewhere.
Oh, you do it on that
Yeah.
side, okay.
Because of the school, because the students will be using the park. And again, I'd move the pavilion, if we do it, somewhere over here where it's more accessible, but then also the restroom here.
Okay, I'll just weigh in with my thoughts and then go to Trustee Serrano.
Well, you can go ahead if you want.
Okay. As I look at these single-track trails, they don't really make a lot of sense to me. They're not a loop. When you're riding a bike, you typically like a loop or you like a long trail, and this is kind of, it's kind of like the Jefferson Parkway. It's the road to nowhere. So that just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think where we are in this process, kind of coming in the middle of it, but I've went to a lot of the meetings, prior to getting here, but I think we're at the product of what can we do quickly to get something going at $2 million. That's what the board has found to get this going now as opposed to 2018. And so I think that's why we are where we are. Yeah, we don't have a lot of the amenities because it's going to cost a lot of money and take a lot more years than we have in budget to spend. So on the single track trails don't make a lot of sense. I am in favor of restroom, but I think it makes a lot more sense where Trustee Hanson and others have said, closer to the school. Parking off of Torrey's Peak doesn't make any sense. I think the loop off of Indiana does make sense for drop-off, additional capacity for drop-off, and additional parking for the school makes a lot of sense. And I think we do have to, throw in a trail to connect over to El Dorado. But generally, I think I would agree with what I've heard a lot of neighbors say, and that is, let's get something going, and I think we've got a great asset as it is, and let's get this going. Trustee Sorelli.
A couple of things. Much as you desire to have the whole community involved in this park, it isn't going to happen. I mean, people don't go up that hill if they don't have to.
That's fine.
So
They're invited.
I know, it's essentially a neighborhood park. And not essentially, it is a neighborhood park. And so part of the problem with the visioning process, and maybe reduced some disappointment, is maybe some of that visioning was budget be damned, and unfortunately, we can't do budget be damned. So as a first phase, I can see where we're at, and if somehow we find a way to add things that make sense for a neighborhood park, pit, for volleyball, things like that. I think the restroom is important. You don't bring kids to a park and then don't have a place for them to go. We didn't have a restroom at Purple Park for way too long.
For years.
And that was a mistake, and so restrooms are important. This may seem boring, so I'm not advocating this particular thing, but I happen to take my grandkids to every Wednesday night. Now, they have a green space just like this that they use for soccer practice. Now, you say don't program. Well, it's not programmed for games, but the kids they sort of divide up the field and use it for soccer practice. It's a beautiful park. It's a grassy field. There's a playground up on top. It's off of Arapahoe between 95th and 287. And so you may think that's boring, but it really is a nice place. Kids run around on the grass. And so I'm not saying this has to be the end product, but this is not bad. This is a pretty nice thing to have in your neighborhood. It's not a whole lot less than Purple Park was, except for the water features, which are extraordinary at Purple Park. If we're going to do the loop for the school for parking, I kind of like the idea, if it reduces the price of where Sandy was recommending it go, I think we need to think of that as not park, and that's more transportation safety, and I can swallow that increase in cost a little better in my mindset there. But if just as an aside to also what the Boulder Valley School District said, I'm not going to shuffle kids over to the east side of
Yeah, that makes no
Indiana.
sense.
It's not going to happen, and then you're going to have to make them cross back in front of the school again. So that's I don't know what they're thinking, but that just isn't going to happen. So if you're going to add parking loop on Indiana, you've got to address, is that safe with the current, and that just has to be looked at.
Can I give one more footnote from living there? Staff was out there one day as well. We increasingly have people parking for the school right along here, waiting for their kids to walk down the long sidewalk and get into the car. What has happened now is they come this direction and they use Micah Court in front of my house as their quick turnaround, their quick U-turn to get a prime spot right here. They're often not cognizant of the car behind them, who's also going 25 miles an hour, et cetera, and ready to T-bone them. If we do these parallel parking places, we should be prepared for the same thing. If I live up here,
that doesn't
right, and I get one of these parallel parking spaces, I'm going to be real tempted not to go all the way back around down McCaslin to my house. I'm going to be tempted to make that U-turn. It is, it literally takes your breath away at how many opportunities in a day's time and a week's time for disaster there are there. So either we need, if we do this, the parallel parking, we need to post no U-turn signs and enforce them very well.
More signs.
Yeah, they've worked really well at Superior.
They do the same thing?
I watch it weekly.
Yeah,
Trustee Gregorius.
I totally agree with you, Joe. I think this is if we're thinking about incrementally and phasing it, this is, to me, this is more like a first phase, if you will. That's how I see it. So if it's a first phase, then let's call it for what it is.
But let's see the first phase. That
the
was
old plan.
feasible.
Yeah.
This has veered from the first feasible.
Yeah, I'd love to see the October.
I guess what I'm saying is that I'm comparing the 4 point whatever million, which was the Cadillac version, which was beautiful and really exciting, to this. So I think you're right, there's a discrepancy. We're not comparing apples to apples, so if we want to do first phase back from October to what we're seeing today.
What I'd like Shannon and Bill to comment on is feasibility. How feasible is this 2.2 million option? As opposed to if we start with your phase one here at 1.8 or whatever it was, and you plan for feasibility. So could you address that feasibility issue?
Yeah, the idea of the current one that we were looking
Might
at
come up
tonight
to- come up to the mic.
the current one that we were looking at tonight, the idea was how can we make the best use of what you've got?
Right.
Not phased. Just
Right.
what can we do for as close to 2 million as possible?
No, but I like the feasible.
Move as little dirt as possible and get the park done.
Guess I'm leaning more towards the feasibility of it like we had before.
So, and the other big thing that's changed is the parking loop. And the nice thing that the parking loop does, and I don't want to comment on the traffic problem, I'll defer to the traffic engineers on that, but the nice thing that this does is it gives you a front door to the park that's not that's not somebody's front yard, it's not somebody's backyard. That if you want to put a comfort station or a shelter, you have a place to do it. We were running the utilities off Indiana underneath this. We were using, this is a lot more grading, it's a lot more money, but we were using the excavated soil from cutting out this slope to sort of accentuate the grades in here. I think the biggest opportunity with this park and all the grades in it is to make it an earthwork park. That's what makes it different from every other park in Superior or a lot of other places, frankly. But moving dirt costs money, so that's what we did not do in the $2 million get it done now iteration.
How much was the cost for this?
1.8.
This was just below 2.
1.8.
Yeah, it's fairly comparable, but it doesn't, so this is the area basically in here that's the currently flat area of the park, and we were mostly just using that in today's exercise.
And actually, this area here isn't flat at all.
Yeah.
This whole thing in here is kind of a terrace at a little bit over 2% right now. Around the edges, it slopes down. Here, it's sloping down to Indiana, sloping down to West Torrey's. Here is where it meets West Torrey's, and the idea in bringing this loop in as far as we did was that's how far you have to go before you're approximately at the same grade as this essentially flat area in the center of the park. But if you don't do that, there's no way to get to it except off North Torrey's or going up the hill.
And, can I just say, this design looks so much better. The beginning of so much better. And we can use that as phase one and phase in the other amenities
So
when
you have two
we're
more
ready.
trustees right here with you, Deborah. Sandy and I totally agree with what
I'm
you're
just
saying.
like, wow, what happened to it?
Is this still a $2 million, is this still a
Less
$2
than
million?
1.8,
that's
Or less?
Well, and you add the toilet facilities in there, you're up to $2 million.
And another point to remember here, and this is a fairly significant difference, is this light green is now native grass,
Right.
not the sod.
Exactly.
So that's, again.
So irrigation, you don't have as much
This
irrigation.
is now just,
sod and
this
all
is
that.
kind of your, what would be your kind of grass?
And that
green space, your real green.
manicure.
That comes to my point where $2 million is a smaller park. I mean, that is what is doable here.
But so the loop, that right there is not asphalt, right?
No.
The first
I mean, it would have to be,
We're looking at
or asphalt.
with the concrete.
So we start
trails.
there.
Okay, and the other thing, this escalated too, so this doesn't, we had made these connections all concrete as well, so they would be plowable. So that's not included in here, but this is kind of the bare bones of that
Well, that's
alliteration.
the next phase. No, that's the next phase, because you've got infrastructure there, you've got courts and everything on it.
That's phase two, though.
Yeah,
Phase two.
but phase one, though, if you're going to have a loop there, and you're going to have walkways, you have to have it,
How much does
you
this
have to have it
add?
asphalt, and you have to have it
Go back to
concrete,
phase
so it can be
one.
plowed.
Yeah, we do.
Bill, how much does this one add to Phase 1?
It adds 1.6.
So the Phase 1 and 2 together are 3.4.
That's correct.
3.4, but then if you took out the cost for the loop and put that into another budget, then you reduce it by
Well-
600.
So, I hear, that's been mentioned a couple times.
Yeah.
And just so the board's aware, the capital improvement fund has no additional money available significant until 2019. Unless you wanted to make a significant change in one of the upcoming years, like if you wanted to forego the street improvement program one year, then you could add $1 million to this park budget. I wouldn't recommend that based on our current streets, but I mean, that's what it would take to get a significant amount of money before 2019 into, or the other option is the general fund reserve. We have a balance there that if the board wanted to go below your reserve policy, we could use that money.
That's a dangerous path.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest we do that, but it seems like
those are your.
you guys, every year, we seem to do really well in budget management,
Yeah.
project management,
Yeah.
and we have surplus.
Mhm.
And I guess one of the recommendations would be that let's agree that if we have significant surpluses in the next 2 years, that we allocate some of those surpluses towards this, because this is a big deal, this park.
Yeah.
And I think this one component, the loop, is a big deal as well.
Mhm.
I think we need to try whatever we can to allocate resources towards that.
What the loop does is it gives us connectivity to the school.
Right.
It integrates the school with the park, and...
And it gives you parking that you need for a
Right.
park.
It
You know,
is, right. This is a solution as much to the school issue as it is an entry. It was actually to me, a very, very creative solution to creating interest in the park and solving the school traffic issue that we've been working on since I've been on this board. And that's why to call it a park feature for budgetary purposes doesn't sit well with me. It, at a minimum, needs to be half transportation, half park.
So,
Capital.
It's still
yes,
still money.
A dollar is still a dollar.
yeah, a dollar is still a dollar.
You know,
And in my opinion, I agree with the board. I think the loop and the parking makes sense. And at some phase of the park project, I think it solves multiple problems.
But if this was there, and it's basically the same as it's similar to the one we looked at for the presentation tonight, it's just a different way of landscaping or manicuring the space, and we can get a restroom in here within the $2.2 million, I don't know why we keep talking about it. This is phase one.
Because we've just seen this. We're
Yeah,
just revisiting this.
I asked for this to come back
Okay.
because this
Trustee
was an
Gregoris.
iteration we were.
Well, why don't we just go for it then?
Okay, trustee Gregoris, and then
I don't know why we keep talking about it.
So for next year, we have 2.2 million.
No, not next year, over 3
That's
years.
We have-
Is it 3 years or 2 years? I thought it was through 2017.
We have 200,000 this year for design, and then we have construction over the next 2 years, I believe.
So 216 and 217.
Yes.
We have 2 million, more or less.
We have just identified $1 million worth of bond interest savings coming sometime down the pike. I don't know when that was.
Some of them aren't effective until later this year or into next year. But
So
yeah.
I guess.
That's $1 million.
So this is 1.8, right? This first phase is 1.8.
Throw the toilet in, you're up to 2 million.
Well, it doesn't have to be the toilet.
No, it's just the infrastructure.
Just the infrastructure for the
I'm not
toilet.
hurrying the toilet part. I would like to see, for
Hold it.
Oh, because we can go over to Sandy's house, that's right.
So we could use some of that money towards the loop, the 600,000, right? If there's 1.8, we have 2 million.
Half a loop.
No, this is, the loop is in there. In the-
From the bonds, I'm sorry.
No,
Oh.
are you saying 1.8 including the loop?
Yeah, what you're looking at
But
right
this
there.
isn't paved, it's
This
not
isn't paved.
or
This
there's
is-
no
it
concrete
doesn't have
around
to
it.
be right
It
now,
has to be
though.
Chip seal or something, and it doesn't have to be, that's,
Later on down the road, it can.
Can you
be.
drive
Another
it?
board
Can you drive a
decide
car
that.
up?
I disagree.
oh, you need to be able to snow plow it,
Yeah.
too.
Is it blacktop or is it gravel?
Bill,
Oh,
what
that's
is it?
gravel. I
Well,
thought.
that's why I was thinking
Blacktop, and
more.
you need concrete sidewalks because people are going to be using that to get to school, and so you've got to plow it.
You
No,
gotta plow
that's
it.
why I wasn't thinking gravel. I'm thinking about actually being able to.
I thought it was
Asphalt.
blacktop, and the
Yeah.
other one was concrete. So,
So we can be somewhat creative, use some funding.
well, before we start talking about funding, we don't even know what it's going to cost. I mean, this is an estimate from October or whenever, last 2014. So I think where I'm at is that this is the version that most people are
Excited
thinking
about.
about, with a blacktop loop for, at a minimum, blacktop loop for the parking and access. So, and a toilet, I'm telling you, I think we have to have a toilet. So if we can get a more, better,
Add a roof in.
yeah, or a rough-in, I don't care, it doesn't matter. I'll go to Sandy's house. But for everybody else, I can't go to Sandy's house, or she won't open the door because she doesn't know you. Okay, well, let's give her
Put
your
a
address out to
porta
everybody.
in the backyard.
Then, yeah, put a porta potty up there. But
They have their place.
can we get a cost? Can we say, can we get this for $2 million? Because we're using $200,000 to design it. We don't have 2.2 million, we have $2 million.
For construction, yep.
Can we get this for $2 million?
This is preferable to what was originally presented tonight. I think that's there's
So
a
do we-
consensus here.
Do we have, is staff getting enough,
It's basically the same, but.
enough direction, kind of where to
I
go
mean,
for next steps?
So the next steps,
Nice green field is nice.
just to clarify, would be to take this design
Mhm.
with the loop, asphalt, and get a construction cost estimate.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
Right.
See where we're at.
And can we
See
see
where we're at.
what it would be if we put a concrete sidewalk from here up to here?
Yeah, I think we'd want that too.
It's just like the sidewalk from the parking lot of the North Pool over.
It's,
all the time.
It's a longer part.
It's quite steep going up that, but it's going to be cut across, it's going to be cut across. So I'm with you, Chris, we need to be creative about how that might work. To tweak this one, there was some interest among some group in making, if this is going to be like a walking track or something here, is that right, Bill? Okay. Why are we cutting into the green space there? Why are we not just bordering the green space?
So it fits into the next phases. So the basketball was going
I
to go
see.
here, so the basketball was outside the loop.
Good.
This was the
Okay.
placeholder for tennis. There was the restroom and shelter was in this location. So, yeah, oh, there.
That's why.
Right, good.
Phase 3.
Right, show 3 just for kicks. Because this is our social trail, south of Colton, is this sledding thing here. So if there's any way we can do one thing for the youngsters, that's very popular right there, and that would be fun to incorporate.
What do you have to do to it?
Build a half pipe.
Oh,
What do you have to do?
bring Sean White.
How much does the sledding thing cost?
We didn't do anything to develop the sledding hill. We were just showing a location that doesn't run you into any of the drainage structures. All we were doing was taking a path from Indiana across here to get access to the top of the hill. And we figure if we get the kids here,
They'll
It will,
figure it out.
they will come. Okay, good.
Needs snowmaking.
The other thing is how this exits. is possibly very important. If we force a right turn on the exit, thereby eliminating a conflict point. That was Alex, are you here? That was Alex Arenello's comment, is that if you allow a left turn there, that traffic coming out from school drop-offs is going to have a conflict point going south. So if we make that go right, that might solve it. I'm not a traffic expert, but I think that should be on the table, how to reduce conflict.
I think there
points
should be a stop sign there personally.
So you can turn left.
So yeah,
All right.
I think there should be a three-way stop right there.
Okay.
For all
We're-
three-way stops.
Let's,
That's the whole transportation, safety.
Yeah.
okay, Mayor Pro Tem Williams, and then I'd like to circle back to public comment for anybody who'd like to add closing remarks.
Okay, and I was going to add kind of a wrap-up here, that we're going to look at Phase 1 first and get cost estimates on how much that costs and what other amenities we can add to get to the 2.2 or whatever the magic number
We're
is.
already up there.
You're
Okay.
there.
Okay, and then we will consider Phase 2 and 3 in later years as it comes along the way. Okay, and so will we be looking at Phase 2 and 3 of this layout? What do you mean, no? No?
No.
Why?
Well, I think you need to start with Phase 1.
Yeah.
And then.
But I mean, this is a plan, right? This is a
Right, I
vision
mean,
we're looking at. We need
once
to know
you
what that
have-
vision is.
Once you've started Phase 1, next year, or completed Phase 1, which however the board would like to proceed, then you can start talking about Phase 2 and 3.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but I mean, how you lay out Phase 1 does indicate where you're thinking of putting Phase
Phase
2 and
2.
3.
I'm looking at it as a potential package.
That's
Maybe we
exactly how
don't
I'm
go
looking at
further than Phase 1 ever.
Right.
Right? But if we do, Phase 2 should
It's
be
designed and ready to-
consulted,
yes.
and Phase 3 should be consulted to inform how you augment Phase 1 down the road if it ever happens.
But I
It's
think
a
you ha-
concept
I think you
design.
have that already.
We already have that, yeah.
Well, but
It's
Matt
not a
shook his...
plan that's been approved,
Yeah,
it's just a
yeah.
concept
Yeah.
design that could fit it
I think
as a
that's
starting
right.
point, could be a starting point for
I
the
agree.
next phase.
Okay, let's circle back to public comment. Anybody would like to make any remarks?
Peter Bottomley, Pro-Tech Chair. Just wanted to clarify a couple points I was making before. Regarding the phasing, our point, which I think you're getting, is that if the revised plan looks like a Phase 1, but it wasn't a Phase 1, it was the completed park. So what we were suggesting, what ProStack was suggesting, was that if you're going to start to consider that as a Phase 1 again, design it so that it's going to accommodate Phases 2 and 3.
Right.
So you have some idea what Phases 2 and 3 are, as well as just the simple idea that there is a Phase 2 and 3. Because if you design it with the idea that it can be expanded later, but there's no real plan for that in place, the fear would be that you spend $2 million on this park, and then down the road, another board says, we already spent $2 million there, we're done. And then this board had this expectation that more would be done later, but there wasn't, because there wasn't a plan for it,
So we need to
it potentially doesn't happen. You need to have a plan so that there's something to move towards.
If we have the money, though, to do it.
Well, that's part of the plan, I would think, is that you have the money.
Okay, let's let him wrap up his comments.
The idea that you put parking down here, it seems like it might be a good location, but our concern with the parking is that this is downhill from the core area. So what you really wanted was the parking close proximity on the level of the core area. So that's why the loop or up here accomplished that. Anything down here is downhill from the core area of the park. And then the suggestion before that the public engagement might be okay with the revised plan of really no amenities. There was no charrette example that we came out of in the public engagements where groups were set aside to lay out what they would like on the park. None of those were anything near to that passive of a park. I mean, they all had some level of amenities. So I think what ProStack was getting at was a version of this Phase 3, but you could cut out some of the more expensive amenities. This amphitheater, these tennis courts, potentially the community garden because it has the shed and everything. Some of those were more expensive amenities that could be pulled out. The one thing to note here is that this amphitheater has all this grading in here for hillside. That's obviously not there, so you're going to spend the money to grade it. You're also getting the embankment slide. But if you just left it flat, pulled out the amphitheater, the tennis courts, a couple other things, but left some of the less expensive amenities like the basketball court, sand volleyball, some of the play area, pavilion, you might find a middle ground between that $4.5 million Phase 3 and that $2 million Phase 1. And then just if I could speak just one thing personally rather than as ProStack chair, if you're talking about this as a neighborhood park, remember that the neighborhood we're talking about is south of Colton.
Right.
That's a huge area. I live way over here on Yarrow, and it's a mile to take the bike path past South Pole and everything to get here. That's why the necessity of parking and restroom are really important. Not just because of the distance, though, but also because of the usage. If you're going to have a pavilion for parties, you're going to want a restroom. If you're going to have any larger gathering, which a neighborhood park would be built for, you're going to need more than 10, 15 parking spaces. So that's why we, the public that lives like right here might not think that parking and a restroom are necessary because they're right here. But the majority of residents south of Colton are not right here. They're Castle Peak, Huron Peak, Snowmass, Yarrow. They're much further distances than the houses that are right there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Additional comments?
Kevin Ryan, 3101 West Torrey's Peak. A lot of comments on the feedback that the public has given. Engaged Superior, cool, just went right to the phone. First comment, what do they want? Picnic area, open park to throw a ball, ride a park, small playground, similar to Purple Park. People just want a park. I mean, let's not get distracted by, we have to go and this doesn't, the basic Phase 1 design. Trustee Hansen, it doesn't include anything that the public wanted. I disagree. The primary thing the public wants is to start with the park in an initial phase. So I think it's ironic that we're pulling up we're going to spend a couple $100,000 this year on design, and I know it's a lot more architectural design than just this. But this is from April of 2014. It's over a year ago. It's just very indicative of the way, in my experience, we're spinning here, 4 years after getting comments. So this is great. Let's just do whatever needs to get it done and go with that initial phase. I do agree we should have a plan, and the plan should have a budget associated with it. I do, and I didn't hear the staff the direction to the staff that there should be two options, and I thought you were starting to discuss two options. One option that has that turnaround loop, and the other option for a cost and your consideration as trustees to consider the parking on South Indiana. Once you consider that folks might not want to walk uphill, I understand that might not be what you want, but considering the cost of, if that loop is going to be $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, and doing some leveling and a retaining wall, I think if you can get it for a few $100,000, we could stand there and hand out $5 bills for the next 10 years to every person that's going to go up that hill and apologize. I think you have to consider that option if that loop is going to be cost prohibitive. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Brian Hill, 2110 Kyoto Lane. Hey, my only participation in this is from when my kids were middle schoolers. And I live over by Circle Park off of Imperial and Kyoto Lane there. And I would drive my kids up to that side of town because as soon as they got into middle school, that's where a lot of their friends were. And I remember driving through there and I would see 8, 10, 12 kids just roaming the streets there because they really didn't have any place to go. So when you build this park, you're going to draw a lot of middle schoolers. And a lot of middle schoolers are out at night. And so I'd really suggest that whether it's on the loop or actually in the park itself, put some lighting in. Because when El Dorado has evening functions, instead of people parking up, Sopris or on Indiana, they'll want to park here and then walk over to the school, I think. But I think the middle schoolers are going to be there at all hours, so you can have sort of maybe a different clientele. It may not draw adults from different parts of town, but middle schoolers for sure. And then I had a question about how big of a deal is the policeability of this park? If it's going to draw a lot of people in the evening, I don't know what time the park's supposed to close. I don't know if they close at dusk or how that works. But it seems that the terrain is not really set up to allow the sheriffs to observe that area if it's necessary. And let's see. And if it is going to be police and it requires some sort of special type of policing, what's that going to cost, in addition to what we currently pay? And then last thing, programming. I heard we don't want any programming revenues from this, but if it's a really popular park, how are you going to, you're going to have to do at least some scheduling of the facility. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay. It's closing remarks, and then we'll wrap it up.
I totally agree.
I would like to, however, once and for all, have head nods or a vote. Are we doing single track trail or not?
No.
Great. Did you guys hear that?
Order.
Okay, correct.
Can I ask, though, is that what's in this, was that what's shown there?
I can't read it.
Well,
Is there any
That's a
single
walking
track in
trail.
there?
That's a walking trail? Okay.
No. Shannon,
On the edges there?
can you
those
come to the
little-
mic, Shannon?
Sure.
Well, even if it's on there, I think we've pretty universally said no,
Yeah.
so we can
That's
just
why I'm
take the
asking.
white out to that. and-
Take it out.
Or take
Okay.
the green
That's
out.
right.
Green out
Someone's
and
going
mark
to
over.
Make a comment?
say that this has been approved, even though we haven't approved Plan 3, Phase 3, so,
Correct.
okay.
Okay, just for clarification, Shannon Weber with Design Concepts. In this plan, we did do a single track. The whole idea was to bring in that middle age. We were looking for activities for that middle age group, those teens and tweens, and we thought that was a great activity for that age group. So in this particular case, we did one single track. The plan you saw tonight has several different ones that intertwine and interloop together. So that's the reason we did it. We were thinking about that age.
Well, I don't know, look at Phase 1, that says Phase 3, so what's on?
There is a single track.
There is a single track on that one up in the, right over here.
Not in phase 1, though.
This is Phase 3, so
That's
can you
Phase
move
3.
that? Okay, it's gone there.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. In Phase 1, we did not have it. In the master plan, we
I am
did.
saying, to be clear, I think you understand me, that it is not safe in any iteration, Phase 1, 2, or 3. And I think we need to be dead and gone with that idea before we have any children in that position.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay? So are we agreed on the single-track trail, or are we still going to keep that alive?
thumbs up.
Okay.
2.
And then I
Thumbs
want
down.
to reiterate that if it brings us additional amenitization to the park, and as I'm with Kevin, our community will be very happy, south of Colton will be very happy with well-done green space. And then we can go up from there as the years progress if the budgets allow. I would like this to be looked at in terms of what increment that's adding to the cost. If it's substantial, I'd like to see some other options for that. But this is why I wanted the old 3 graphics brought up early in the discussion, because obviously I think this Phase 1 is much more appealing to everybody than the Phase 1 we dwelt on tonight. And I have to say, what it does that is my number one objective is allow us to connect, to maximize, or to use the uniqueness of the lot to connect the community and the school. And I'm happy to see that other people have that as a priority.
Okay, so as next steps, we'll see revised plan come back to us, make final comments, and then we send it off for budgeting or construction budgeting.
Yeah, we can do it that way, or we were going to just give you cost estimates the next time we bring it back.
Okay.
That's great.
That's fine, too.
It's even better.
That's even better. Okay.
Yeah.
The only
Good.
optional that I think Mr. Ryan mentioned.
I'm sorry, for Phase 1, right?
Yes.
Right, but can I just add that Phase 1, sorry, if Phase 1, it comes in less, then we can add amenities to make that the 2 million.
And we can have a list of amenities with the cost like we
That we
provided.
would like as
in
first
your packet.
priority, absolutely.
I thought it might have been, I thought it was a good suggestion to have the alternative of the loop off straight up on with the retaining wall if it was cheaper, just to look at that option as well. And either way, having the concrete walkway to the school across.
We will definitely take a look at that. I mean, that's a lot of dirt to remove, so I'm not sure if it will be cheaper, but we'll definitely take a look
I
at it.
can't imagine that it would, because this parking lot up here was $300,000.
Okay.
This is $600,000, so I got to believe this is going to be very similar to this. And if it's close, even if this is 50,000 or 100,000 less, I'd still be, I prefer this.
I agree. I mean, looking at the numbers on retaining walls that we've seen on Town Center, I've got to believe that would, and I think it would be unsightly, too. I think you've got a nice, it looks nice as it is, and to put a gigantic retaining wall there, I think that visually would be a real...
Well, it's not gigantic. If you walk out there, it's not gigantic.
Well, I think to put any...
It can be terraced, and it can be landscaped beautifully on the one terrace. But I agree, if it doesn't save you any money...
Don't do it.
We've got the solution here.
And I think if the object is to get people dropped off to school together, I don't see how dropping off kids at North Torrey Peak in Indiana, that doesn't do you anything. I mean, that's not a drop-off. I mean, on a frigid, cold day, nobody's going to drop off there. They're going to...
I need you out there in your school guard role saying, this is not a drop-off, all you cars that are dropping your kids off here.
I'll be making my debut over there in 2 years, so just watch out.
But
Okay.
what you're saying, though, is I think that if you don't move this loop down here and you leave it along El Dorado, you're never going to get rid of the cars on West Torrey's Peak.
That's right.
So this will actually create more of a probability that they'll move off of it. They'll never leave your space, so.
I think
there's your
Mr.
street.
Hill had a good point. Do we ever run this by law enforcement to see how they police these things? Because if they've got red flags, now's the time to raise them.
Yeah, I mean, the comments we received from the sheriff's department is lighting, if you have, good lighting, and if they have access points, like the loop would provide them to be able to get into the park and see what's going on. If you didn't have that, then they're further away from the inner activities of the park, things like that.
We could have those helicopters with the spotlights flying over.
Drones.
So like South LA.
Is it already been determined that the loop has to be back here? It can't end here because of the slope?
An idea to shorten that loop up?
I don't know if Design Concepts has looked at that. Yeah, so, yeah. The answer is yes.
Okay, anything else? All right, we're adjourned.
Adjourned. This is Chris.
Wow, we could have saved ourselves all.